Well, good morning and welcome everyone. I can see the webinar has started. Thank you all for joining this AFME webinar on the German elections, which are just over 10 days from now. I'm very excited to have two great speakers here today with me to discuss the election process and what it might mean for the years to come. With me, I have Frank Müller-Rosentritt, who is a member of the German Parliament. Frank is the rapporteur for banking regulation of the Deutsche Bundestag. He's no stranger to banking issues, having worked at Deutsche Bank for more than 15 years. And he's been a member of the Bundestag for the last 8 years. Frank is a member of the FDP, the German Liberal Party, and Frank also sits on the Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee, so is no stranger to geopolitical issues and all of that. We also have Felix Hüfner. Felix is the chief German economist at UBS Investment Bank. He's based in Frankfurt, although Felix here today in London, I understand. Felix joined UBS in 2015 from the IIF, where he was also chief economist and based in Washington, DC. And before that, Felix headed up the Germany desk at the OECD. He's also worked as an economist for the Bundesbank, the ECB, and for German Research Institute at ZEW. My name is Arvid Kolle. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a director based in AFME's Frankfurt office. I'm responsible for our advocacy strategy in Germany, our relationship with the ECB, and also our work streams on the EU-UK relations. There's not much housekeeping for me to do today, other than to briefly go over the structure that we have. So Felix will initially give us his insights into the macroeconomic view on Germany, all the challenges, both structural and cyclical, that Germany faces. After that, I'll go over the latest polling and where the main parties stand on financial market issues. And then we get Frank into the conversation on his political insights on the most likely coalitions and what a new government might look like. We'll also discuss how the new government could react to all the challenges that the country faces at the moment, and we'll do a little deep dive on financial market issues. I also want to use the last 15, 20 minutes for a Q&A with the members. So please do come in. I hope you can all see the chat window on the Zoom interface. So if you click on able to submit your questions, we will be able to see them and I'll moderate them. So please do keep them coming. I'll also remind you at times to please come in with questions, and we'll try to address all of them as best as we can. But with that, I want to give over to Felix. Felix, for your first insights into the German.
Yeah, thank you, Arvid. Good morning from my side as well. So yeah, on Germany, I think the starting point is really that the economic performance of Germany has been very weak over the past 5 years. And what you've seen is basically almost the complete opposite of what we saw during the 2010s, when Germany was somehow the powerhouse of Europe. We were worried about growth in the periphery, in Italy, in Spain, and so on. But since 2019, Germany has basically stagnated. Its GDP is up 0.1%, while the Eurozone overall is up 4.6%. Italy is up 5.5%. Spain is up over 6%. So what you've seen is the complete opposite of before, a huge underperformance of the German economy. We just had 2 years, subsequent years of negative growth. You have to go back a long time to see such a weak performance. Now, where do we go from here? I think to understand, what to expect going forward, you need to analyze a bit why is this underperformance happening, and what are the factors driving this? And we think that what is happening in Germany is that you have a mix of very unfavorable cyclical headwinds, which by definition cyclical, they fade at some point. And you also have structural headwinds, which will be a lot harder to overcome. So our forecast is that Germany will be able to exit stagnation. And our forecast is for it to grow again this year, but not a lot. 0.6% is what we have penciled in, 0.8% in 2026. And that is because even though you get out of a cyclical trough, you are still bound by these structural headwinds. So what are the cyclical factors that weigh against German activity? So there are really three. The first is that global demand is very weak. The export orders that German industry um, is getting out of Asia, for example, have declined for a long while. They are now stagnating, but there's not really big signs of an increase here. And of course, there is the threat that you get tariffs from the US, which would be another headwind to this to the export demand. The second headwind is monetary policy. So the ECB has tightened policy substantially, took the policy rates from negative territory up to 4%. It's true that it's now starting to cut, and we think there will be more cuts to come. But as always with monetary policy, this works with a lag. So what we see currently still in the economy is the tight monetary policy over the past couple of years, and that's most significant in the construction sector. Now we think that headwind will fade. We think the ECB is cutting rates. You're now seeing that credit growth starts to grow again. People demand more mortgages, but it just takes time for this to feed through to better construction. And the third headwind is a very European specific and a German specific one. It's fiscal tightening. So you have the European fiscal rules, the Stability and Growth Pact, being followed again this year. France, Italy making efforts to bring down their budget deficits, and Germany has its debt brake, and also needs to consolidate, and that costs us about 15 basis points, 20 basis points of growth. It's not a lot, but it doesn't help if you add up all the headwinds that we have. Now we talk about the election outcome a bit later, but our baseline in terms of the macro view would be that we get some change in the fiscal picture in Germany. So I think that headwind becomes a bit smaller in our view, and that is because this German debt brake we think will be relaxed, and we'll talk more about this later on. We think such a relaxation could give us growth of about 30 to 40 basis points for Germany. So it helps to get us out of stagnation, but not back to the 1.5% or so that we had pre-COVID. So cyclically, these headwinds that some of them become smaller, combined with a strong labor market, strong wage growth, we think provide the backdrop for some cyclical improvement. Now that's the good news, that we can grow again. The bad news in a way is that we still have these structural headwinds, and that means that even if Germany starts to grow again, it will, in our forecast, just grow not more than 0.7, 0.8%. So still lagging the Eurozone. And why is that? There are basically three factors, structural factors affecting us. The first is demographics. Germany is aging quicker than any other G7 country in this decade. So that is the age cohort of the 15 to 64-year-olds is declining by 8% because it's the baby boomers retiring. And that, of course, dampens growth because GDP is produced by, you need to have enough people and you need to make those people productive. So we have fewer people, that's a headwind. The second headwind comes from high energy prices. So gas prices in Europe are now around 50 euros per megawatt hour. In the US, it's 10. And the energy price disadvantage, if you want, is, I think, a longer term structural consequence of the war in Ukraine and the gas, that stopped flowing from Russia. And now we are just more dependent on LNG imports globally. They are more volatile in price, and therefore that will continue to be a headwind. And you see this in energy intensive industries being under a lot of pressure. And the third headwind is China. And not so much the weakness of demand of China for German goods. It's more the competition of China in third markets for goods, where Germany used to have basically a unique advantage. And that hits the car industry more than others because it's more geared towards China. That is the competition of Chinese electric vehicles competing with German electric vehicles. So it's not so much the problem that Germans buy fewer electric vehicles than you may hope for. It's that the world is buying fewer German cars, and that headwind is also difficult to to change. So therefore, I'd say to conclude, these structural headwinds we think will just mean that German structural longer term growth will just be capped by 0.8%. If you speak to some in Berlin and the government, they are even more pessimistic about this longer term. But the good news, in a way, is that the stagnation or even GDP decline we saw over the last year, that this is not the new normal. This is basically also driven by the cyclical headwinds that will fade. So let me leave it here, Arvid, and hand it back to you.
Thank you, Felix, for this picture. And it is a very mixed one. Certainly some big challenges ahead. And we can certainly discuss what the German government can do and what it might do, and also think about how this relates to financial markets, which of course is the priority area that we look at. But I know many of those dialing in are also interested in having looked at the attendee list. I know there are some of you who will look at Germany pretty much day in, day out, but some of you might not. So I thought it would be helpful to briefly go over some of the figures of the polling where we are today, and also think a bit about how the new government might look like. And I will also briefly discuss financial markets priorities of the different parties. So here we have a poll from a couple of days ago that I will briefly go through. So clearly ahead of the pack is the Union, which is the German word for the CDU, and the Bavarian sister party CSU, which is the conservative main bloc in Germany. They are at 30%, and with that quite likely to lead the new government with their lead candidate Friedrich Merz. Then we have the Social Democrats expected to lose around 10% compared to the 2021 vote, and they're currently around the 15% mark. They have, of course, at the moment, the majority or the biggest party slice in the government, and they have Chancellor Scholz, but that is very likely to change. The Greens have been pretty stable in the last few weeks at around 13%, but also losing a bit compared to 2021. And then we have the FDP around the 5% threshold. I'll speak in a moment about what that really means. It's also interesting that the AfD seems to more than double their vote share to 22 expected at the moment. And then we have two other parties around the 5% threshold, the Linke, which is more on the far left or further left than the Social Democrats. And we have a new party bloc emerging, which is the BSW, which has split off from Die Linke. Perhaps a couple of words to say, or one final sentence maybe on this. On the furthest right in the light gray, you see Sonstige, which is the German word for others. So these are a kind of block of very small parties. In Germany, you have to reach 5% to enter the Bundestag. If you do not enter it, you will not be part of the new government or the new parliament unless you manage to win 3 direct seats. That all sounds very complicated, but it's born out of the German system where voters get 2 votes for each election. The first one is for a direct candidate in a constituency, and the second vote is for a party, and about half of the seats of the parliament are made up from the direct votes, half of the seats are made from the party votes. But this does have quite big implications, I think, for the next government and what it might look like. At the moment, we have a 3-party government of the Social Democrats, the Greens, and the FDP. That is most likely to change, but what is a bit unclear is whether we will have a 2-party or whether we might need a 3-party government. And that will probably be determined whether those three parties around the 5% threshold, the Liberals, the Linke, and the BSW, whether they make it in or not. If none of them make it in, of course, the overall proportion of parties in the parliament changes, meaning that a vote share of around 45%, 46% maybe might already be sufficient to reach a government majority. So there we could quite likely see a CDU, CSU-led government together with either the Social Democrats or the Greens. However, if all of these three parties make it in, then there would be more of a vote share required. So therefore, we might again see a three-party government. One thing is clear, all parties have ruled out a coalition with the far-right AfD, given their extreme views, particularly on the parts of their party which are seen as extreme right. And one other thing that I want to touch on, and that gets us to the financial market priorities, is that this year, and this has been, I think, reflected by the remarks from Felix, there's a huge focus on the economy in Germany. I think voters do very clearly recognize that there is a challenge on the demographics, on growth, on competition from China. Felix mentioned the German car industry. So I had a quick look at the key issues that voters care about, and most of them are linked to the economy, whether that is overall economic growth, whether that is social injustice, whether that is views on the pension system. But there's one issue that has taken over in the last 2 weeks or so, which is a huge debate on migration. And this has also slightly shifted the focus of the parties over the last weeks. But with that, let's briefly touch upon the financial market priorities from the four main parties. I have here neglected the AfD, given that no other party will want to work with them in the parliament. I think that's been very clear over the last few weeks and also years. If we look at kind of broader areas here, it's I think clear that there is a broad consensus on CMU topics. So all parties have a sentence in their draft manifestos around progressing CMU. But another picture that emerges is the German reluctance on the banking union. So the conservative CDU, CSU speak about preserving the three-pillar banking system. The FDP even have a sentence in their draft manifesto on opposing EDIS. And then there's also something that comes through is the general focus of the different parties. So the Social Democrats and in their aim to achieve economic growth, propose a state-run Germany fund of 100 billion to drive investment, whereas the Greens focus more on sustainable finance and the need to achieve climate targets. One quite big issue in the last parliament, but probably also for the next parliament, will be whether to and how to reform the pension system, which is at the moment a pretty simple pay-as-you-go system in Germany. So the CDU, CSU want to introduce a private retirement savings account. The Social Democrats have a bigger focus on occupational pensions with a bit of a private retirement savings add-on, I would say. The Greens want to introduce a publicly managed pension fund, and the FDP, I would say, here goes furthest by, I've summarized it as moving towards a Swedish model. So quite big changes, both in terms of setting up private pension funds, but also encouraging people to save. And they even have a sentence in that to transform Germany into the nation of shareholders, which I believe Germany is very far away from at this moment. And then the final category I wanted to look at is on regulation and tax to give all the listeners and viewers a bit of a sense of where the parties stand there. So one thing that comes through is quite both the CDU and the FDP are very critical on reporting. So both want to abolish CSDDD. there's a general sense of reducing bureaucracy and encouraging growth. Both the CDU and the FDP, again, quite similar on having a no gold plating at national level requirement in that they want to introduce. So national law should never go beyond EU law. The SPD want to introduce an FTT, although they've been wanting to do that in their manifesto for a while. So this is not to worry anyone in that sense. And then I thought the Greens were quite interesting. I believe they were the only party that picked up harmonization of contract and insolvency law at EU level. They, of course, don't want to abolish CSDDD, but implement it, and they do want to simplify sustainable finance disclosure. Whereas here, I believe the FDP goes furthest. They, in addition to CSDDD, they also want to abolish the taxonomy and CSRD. There's also quite a bit of a focus on crypto and incentives for retail investments, which I mentioned earlier as well. This, of course, isn't the complete picture. It's that there is much more nuance in all the party manifestos, but hopefully it does give us and the viewers and listeners a good initial idea of where all the four parties stand, given that we are likely to see at least two of these in a coalition government, perhaps even three, but we will get to that now as I hand over to Frank. Frank, you have been part of the parliament, a member of the parliament for the last 8 years. You've been a member also of the government party in the last legislative period, and you have also, of course, been part of the German political scene. And they basically kick off the day after the elections. So, Frank, it would be really interesting to hear from you on your personal insights. Let's imagine it's the day after the elections. It's the 24th of February. What happens? Can you take us through the process, the coalition negotiation process, the likely timelines, and most importantly, your insights into what we might see in terms of a new government? Who do you have your money on, basically? Who do you think might be the new government party? Thanks, Frank.
Thanks a lot. So I do not know it, but for sure. But I will give you a brief overview about the negotiation process, because I had an opportunity to be part of the last negotiation team, and I can give you some details how it works, because I think it's very important to see where you have to be, when you have to be where, and this is very, very, very important. So the first thing is my first experience when it comes to negotiation process is you can only negotiate what is in the election manifesto. So is the word, for example, secularization not part of the election manifesto of the parties, it will not be part of the game. So only what is in the election manifesto comes on the table for the negotiation process. So this is very important. So lobbying is beginning long time before the negotiation process is going to start. So you have to be very early. You have to implement submarines in the parties very early to bring your words in the election manifesto. So, and then all election manifesto come on the table, and then the negotiation process starts. Maybe one thing, because this is what, and then you have some exceptions if there are very experienced guy or woman. Okay, I want to have secularization in the coalition contract. Okay, then maybe is it possible, but it is nearby impossible to bring main topics on the table without being in the election manifesto. So it is the first thing. Maybe I can share with you my most shocking experience during the last negotiation process. There's one thing and I think sometimes from external, a little bit overestimated. There's one thing, or there's one skill. There's one skill. It doesn't play any role, and this skill is knowledge. This is very important to know that democracy means people from ordinary people from a wider society get elected. And of course, then it doesn't matter whether you know something about your topics or not. It's everything about where you are from how senior you are. And so if you see how how the peoples come in on the table. It's more about, oh, he's from Bavarian, or this is we have no guy from Eastern Germany. Okay, we have to install one from Eastern Germany. And is there a very, very, very smart banker, for instance, from Frankfurt? But unfortunately, we have already one guy from Frankfurt on the table. Then he has no chance. He has to go to the Committee for Foreign Affairs, but because we need some guy or some woman from Eastern Germany. So this is you have to know this, and this makes the work also from AFME very important, and also from the banks. I think lobbying is not bad. It's not a bad thing. It is crucial because it's about education, and especially for the next negotiation process. When you see how less people from the current members of the Committee for Finance Affairs, or the Finance Committee, will stay there. For our party, I can say, even we jump over the hurdle rate of 5%, no one is there, no one. So 8 years experience of 4-5 people are not on the table. And so the people, they jump in the next time. They need education. They need information, and they never heard something about securitarization. Then capital market union, they sound like Chinese words for them, and this is unbelievable. But this is the truth. And Arvid told me I should tell you the truth, and now I hope I did it. And yes, and what we expect from the timeline, I think today after the election we are going to have something like a pre-negotiation, and this pre-negotiate process. I think it takes not longer than 1 or 2 weeks to see is it possible for. Of course, it's for sure that the CDU will get in power, and Friedrich Merz is definitely the next chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, of course. But the question is with whom, and then they do it from yeah, for political correctness. They also want to talk with the Green parties. I think they will talk with the Social Democratic Party, and they also want to talk with Liberal if we jump in, of course. And then after 1 or 2 weeks, they could know we have we have no common sense with Green, and we do it with the Social Democratic Party. So. But and then after this pre-negotiate process, we will step in the negotiation. Yes, in the debate. And last time it took 5 weeks, 5-6 weeks, and I think I expect also a long. Negotiation process, because I think if black, so CDU, and red, Social Democratic, comes together, they come from different planets, so they come from different universe, and then and they know they have to negotiate very, very tough, because when is written down, then this is the roadmap for the next week. And I think it will take longer than a lot of people in Germany are going to expect. But unfortunately, and this is what Arvid mentioned on the last slide, if you see the polls right now, there are only two possibilities. So you have CDU and SPD. If without left parties and without liberal parties, you only have a majority of CDU and SPD. So this is for sure. And without Liberal Party, it's the same. And with Liberal Party, this is the next one. If the Liberal Party take the hurdle rate 5%, then you have only majority with CDU, SPD, and Liberals, because you have more seats in the parliament, and so and there is no majority of CDU and SPD. So okay, and because they do not want the Greens in the team, and so there's only a chance for this coalition. So anyway, we have SPD and CDU, or if the FDP have only one possibility, this is CDU, SPD, and Liberal Party. We have one risk, and as a former banker, I've mentioned already, I used to work for Deutsche Bank for more than 15 years, so you also have to focus on risks. And there's one risk in this election, and now people starting a little bit talking about in the last days, is because the polls for the Linke, our left-wing party, increase from 4 to 6%. So, and if the Linke, our left party, and if the BSW, it's called after a person, Sarah Wagenknecht, is a very, very extreme left-wing party, dead left, that is extreme, that's they have very common with right-wing parties, so a lot of shares. But if they have 5% or 6% from the BSW, if the left-wing party, the left party have 6%, if the Green Party have maybe not 13 but 14 or 15, and the Social Democratic Party have not 15 but 16, so it's everything possible, then we have a majority of left-wing parties: Social Democratic Party, Green Party, BSW, and left. So it is. This is a risk for Germany, that Robert Habeck, the candidate for the Green Party, will increase a little bit more in the next days, and maybe he can become chancellor, because we have a majority of left-wing parties. So this is thinking about in risk. Risk opportunity is not a good word, but thinking about risks and probabilities, then you have to have this result also on your map, because you have to prepare for that. And but it's possible. But I think we will have a government of CDU and SPD, and of course I would wish we have a government of SPD, CDU, and Liberal Party, but it depends whether the Liberals get in or not. I think I end my introduction, Marks,
Yes.
and then you can.
Thank you very much, Frank. That's been really interesting, and thank you for laying that out so clearly. Maybe just one follow-up question. If we go with your base case, which would be either CDU and SPD or CDU, SPD, and Liberals, so it's clear Friedrich Merz from the CDU will become chancellor. But two ministries that are extremely important for us as an industry are, of course, the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Economics. Do you think the CDU would give away the Ministry of Finance, or would they try to keep it? Who might we see as a finance minister? And would that then automatically mean that we have one of the other parties in the Ministry of the Economy? What do you think about that?
If I would be the Chancellor of Germany from CDU, I would never give the money to the Social Democratic Party. So I think yes, but this is part of the negotiation process, and this is one of the toughest moment. Who's getting the Ministry of Finance? So yes, and if in case CDU will get it, of course, you have not that much names. A lot of people say Carsten Linnemann, but I heard that Carsten Linnemann maybe will follow him in the headquarter of the chancellor. But you have Jens Spahn, former Minister of Health, and he's in the last weeks or month, yes, years. He was very focusing on financial and economic issues, and I think, then of course you need also women in the part, and you need also women, and then you have also yes, you have also some women, one woman, but it depends, and if we liberal will jump in, of course, it's Christa Lindner again. We had it already. But this I can't remember the name, but from the woman. But yes, Lindemann, Spahn, and I think this is good. Julia Klöckner,
Yes.
Then I think Julia Klöckner you can have her on the book for Ministry of Economic Affairs. But I'm sure CDU cannot have all three chancellor,
Indeed.
economics and finance. It's not possible. And this is a fight between Julia Klöckner, Jens Spahn, and Carsten Linnemann. But yes, I think you should have this name on your book.
Thank you very much, Frank, for all of these insights. That's extremely interesting. Felix, I want to get you back into the conversation with everything you've.
And the employees of those people,
Yes.
because these are only the VIPs, the very important person, but you have to focus on the MIPs, the most important person, and these are the employees, and of course they will become very, very important.
Indeed. Felix, I want to get you back into the conversation from everything you've heard, from everything that you're looking at, and with the challenges that you outlined in the beginning in mind. What do you think the German government can do over the next 4 years? What should they do? And what do you think the markets might expect or look out for?
Yes, so if you look at the party manifestos, so we did the same as you did across other areas of policy. All parties want tax cuts for households. All parties want either tax cuts for corporates or investment subsidies for corporates. All parties want lower energy charges. All parties want more defense spending. And all parties want less bureaucracy. So that's the parties, that may be part of a new government. So not the AfD or BSW. Now, what is, I think, the elephant in the room? How do you finance all of this? And that goes back to what I mentioned earlier, that it seems to us that this debt break German fiscal rule will have to be relaxed to finance at least some of the promises that are in the party manifestos. And then it depends on two things. One is, can a coalition agree on this? And as Frank said, if you go to current polls, you would have the CDU and the Social Democrats in a grand coalition. We would think that they could agree on loosening this fiscal rule. The conservatives are a bit stricter when it comes to reforming fiscal rules or to fiscal spending, but we would think within limits they would agree to this. And
yes, and Friedrich Merz, sorry for interrupting you, but Friedrich Merz last week in the television debate opened the window for reforming the death rate a little bit. So this was in the spirit of compromise.
Yeah, exactly. So I think then the question is two questions. One is, how do you do that? And Germany being Germany, this debt break fiscal rule is in the constitution. So if you want to change this, you will have to change the constitution. So that basically opens up the question. It's not just about who will be in the next government and will have more than 50% of seats in parliament. It's about whether you have a 2/3 majority of parties that are willing to change the constitution. And if I look at election night, this will be watched as well. So you know, how much can you achieve in terms of changing the constitution? And I think a big focus, certainly in our client discussions, is about whether those parties that would oppose any change of the fiscal rules, and we think this would include the AfD, likely the BSW as well, perhaps the liberals when they come in, whether they would get to more than 1/3 of seats. And I think that will be important. Now, in our baseline scenario, we assume all goes well and you get some fiscal loosening. However, what we focus on and stress very much is that this additional spending space that you get through debt break reform is not very high. And that is because you have the EU fiscal rules that set limits for the budget deficit, the famous 3% of GDP ceiling. And then you have the German fiscal rule, which is tighter. So if now the Germans would agree to ease the fiscal rule to get a bit more spending space, you basically hit the EU limits next. And the difference between the two, it's up for debate. We estimate it's about 30 billion. That helps Germany, but it's not a big game changer. But in our baseline view, we would think this is likely. What will this imply in terms of policy changes? We think a lot of this will be used to finance more defense spending. Just to keep 2% of GDP defense spending, you need more money, so to say. And if you want to spend more than 2%, you need even more. And once you have done that, then I think the discussion would be, is there money left over to do other things, namely provide support, either tax cuts to households or provide support to corporates. My fear would be that not so much money is left over, but the more you can do to cut taxes for corporates, the better for investment and the better for productivity going forward. Now, before I conclude, I would say this is one scenario we have. We also have two alternative scenarios. If you want the upside scenario, the positive one is that you get a lot more agreement, that you get a lot more fiscal spending. And how could that be? Well, it could be that the CDU and the Social Democrats agree on a moderate easing of the debt break, but in order to push this through, they need the votes of the Greens to get to 2/3 majority. And the Greens would then ask for even more fiscal spending. And then the Germans would have to go to Brussels and ask for more leeway under the EU fiscal rules. And perhaps you get also an agreement on easing bureaucracy rules and generate more business sentiment. So it's a bit the upside growth boost scenario. We think that has a 15% probability, but perhaps that's a bit too pessimistic. But then there's also, and a scenario which is more the downside. We call it status quo. That's a scenario where nothing happens. And that could be either because you don't have a 2/3 majority in parliament and a very narrow majority anyway for government, so you cannot ease the fiscal rules, and or in the coalition agreements, they can just not agree on the policy differences. The CDU wants lower corporate taxes. The Social Democrats would say, no, we want investment subsidies. And we just agree on things that are not really meaningful. And I would remind people that grand coalitions, so CDU, SPD coalitions in the past, were never coalitions where a lot of things got done. So there is a certain probability for this scenario as well. We give it 25%. So of course that's all subjective, but I think you have to really think about scenarios, because also what Frank said, there are many possible outcomes in terms of direct seats, about how strong the left will be. It is not as clear, I think, as the opinion polls currently suggest it could be.
Thank you very much, Felix. And I think that's right. It's probably one of the most unpredictable elections of the past years. And not only that, but also very unpredictable in terms of what might happen. And then also thinking about perhaps constitutional changes on the debt break. We will have to wait and see, I guess. But we have about 15 minutes left. And I do want to encourage members to put in questions into the chat. We will do our best to answer them. Please do ask away. While we wait for questions, Frank, we've touched on some financial market issues. Of course, on economic terms, as Felix outlined, it's all very interlinked, and growth is a huge part of the equation and the discussion at the moment. And we as financial markets obviously also think about how we can contribute to the growth agenda. AFME itself put together a paper already in October that we shared with key interlocutors in the German political ecosystem on priorities on how financial markets can better support growth. And that includes, of course, European the European agenda, CMU, and other priorities, but also national changes. You've sat in the Finance Committee. You're the rapporteur on banking issues. And in your time in government, we have seen quite a few legislative changes, the Future Financing Act, but some other huge changes didn't quite make it through, even though they were essentially agreed, and then the government collapsed. But with your background, what do you think we can expect for the next 4 years? When might we see issues being put back on the table? We already also spoke about pension reform. That will certainly be something that's to be discussed. You yourself mentioned securitization. Can you give us 5 minutes on where you see the priorities of any new German government, and what you think we might happen?
Yeah. Yes, I think that we achieved not that less because we changed things like the Win Initiative or Growth Opportunities Act, Future Financing Act, Second Market Lending Act. So we did more than other great coalitions before have been done. So this is the first thing. But unfortunately, of course, not every bill passed the parliament because the government were broken. So we have in the pipeline the Financial Market Digitalization Act, of course, the Future Financing Act 2, and of course the market-based pension plan. So, but this is what is in the pipe. What is in the pipeline of the current rest government? But what we expect. So what I would expect. I think this is the big difference between SPD and CDU because we have it's not about capital in this world. Everything is about education. So and with 27 different rules, it's not that easy to bring all the money to Europe, especially not to Germany. So we have to deepen our capital market, and of course, and this is that should be the absolutely main focus, how we can deepen our capital market, that we have progress in the capital market union and also the banking union, but of course in the capital market union. This is the easiest and this is the cheapest way to increase and to get competitiveness back and and bring money in the European Union. So this is the first thing. But everybody's talking about this, but I think we should start with small steps. And this is what Christian Lindner and Bruno Le Maire already started. And I know that Cookies, our current Minister of Finance, is also very, very engaged in this topic. Is okay. We have to start with two steps to increase or to have a little bit progress of capital market union. So the one thing is improving our securitization market. This because the EU is working to ease the regulatory burden on securitization transaction to make them a more attractive financing tool. But in Germany, we have to convince people that it's not toxic, because everybody is thinking about 2008. And but it is without securitization, we will achieve nothing in the next decade. We will not all the transaction financing for the green energy, the Green Deal, without securitization. No state balance sheet will give them. You can reform the debt rate, but you do not have the money without securitization. So the first thing, and I know that Cookies is focusing on this. Unfortunately, his party not, but he is. But in CDU, a lot of people know what it is, but we have to convince them. Merz is understanding all the things. And second thing is, of course, we have to implement market-based pension plans. With you have only to see to Sweden, to Stockholm, then we can activate a lot of private capital. So we have to reinforce or to boost the acceptance of capital market-based pension plans, because existing products we have in Germany are too complicated and too expensive. And so this is very, very, very important that we have those first steps. To create a large market-based pension plan to reform our pension system, to a wider share of private pension, and of course we have to focus on improving our securitization markets and a lot of other things. We have to reduce our CSRD reporting or CRDD, because now I do not know how many data points we have, 1,000, 2,000, and to bring it in one chapter. And I think a lot of things to do. And Cookies, and now I'll tell you some secrets from the Committee for Finance. The last sitting we had in the committee, Cookies, is a member of the Social Democratic Party. He offered us is that he will go to Brussels and he will ask for a moratorium of no corporate responsibility reporting directive for 2 years. So here we have to stop it. We have to make a break for 2 years, and then we will see how many different reportings we have, and then we should have one reporting system for ESG for everybody in the European Union, and where everybody knows how it works, what data you need, and then but until we have this, we should have a break for 2 years. His words in the committee, and it doesn't sound like a Social Democratic Party, but it sounds like Cookies, and this is a different. So maybe he is also maybe he will stay in power because Cookies is a good guy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Frank. And with that, I can see questions popping up in the chat. I might ask a very personal one first to Frank, and then go over the others. But Frank, you told me a few months ago that you decided not to stand again for the German Bundestag. So after 8 years in Parliament, this time will come to an end. You want to spend more time with your families, with your family and your three daughters. But maybe one question to you: what's next? What is next on the list for you after 2 legislative periods?
Okay, you mentioned already a little bit more time with family, because 7 weeks away is not that good for family and children. But if you ask me, okay, I can. Because I know the system, how exactly it works, because I'm an insider for more than a decade. I will found a own very exclusive public affairs and governmental affairs consulting boutique, focusing on banks and giving the banks especially foreign banks or the national banks, the chance for manageable money to get access to the parliamentarians. So, because I know all the parliamentarians, they're responsible all for our issues, and all the people in the government and the ministries, and yes, and giving them access on a very low level. And this is what I want to do, because I see we have to do a lot more in Berlin. A lot of people are in Frankfurt or London, and I wonder why no parliamentarian visit the events in Frankfurt, because in London or in Paris every parliamentarian is there, but in Germany we have the difference between Berlin and Frankfurt, and so I think if we want to change things, we have to do much more, because our Volksbanken and also our Sparkassen do a lot, and some mindset of our parliamentarians is the result of a very frequent conversation between our public banks with the parliamentarians, because they are all here, and this is what I want to do, because I want to change things, and yes, that's what I want to do.
Thanks, Frank. So surely you'll be no stranger to us in the future, which is good to hear. And then looking at the questions we got, we have one on the baseline scenario and CDU's SPD coalition with or without the Liberals, and what the new government can do to fight the structural headwinds that we mentioned before. I think we've pretty much answered that already. But we can give that to Felix in addition to one of the other questions, which is there's been an awful lot of talk on the EU-US trade tensions and potential tariffs. Felix, is this something that you've taken into account in your scenarios? How are you looking at that? I know you already mentioned the German car industry. Surely there's quite a bit of worry on that side of the economy.
Yes, indeed. I think it's a major downside risk. So if we estimate that if the US were to introduce 10% tariffs on the EU, that would cost us between 30 and 70 basis points of growth. So any easing of the debt brake and more fiscal spending would be wiped out in terms of growth. I think that's of course a static calculation. I think the interesting thing is, how will a new government be able to confront this? How, would there be an ability to strike a deal with the US? Could this involve more purchases of US defense goods? Could this be that we import more LNG from the US? And how will a new chancellor after the elections approach this? And the other question is, within Europe, so trade policy is not done on a country by country basis, but it's the EU that does the policy for the bloc as a whole. But obviously, the national governments need to agree on this. So this will be very much a question about how Germany can find majorities within the EU. How good can they get along with France? And we know from past trade disputes that Germany obviously has more of an interest in free trade because of its large manufacturing sector than other countries may have. But from everything that you can read, there is already discussion at the EU level taking place. So hopefully they can react quite quickly if and when we get the news from the US.
Thanks very much, Felix. And then we have 2 minutes remaining. So Frank, I'm asking for a 1-minute answer on this one. What are the chances to see the AfD in government, and what are the main effects of a potential coalition with the AfD?
No chance.
That
100% no chance.
That was a very quick 1-minute answer. Thank you very much, Frank. Look, with that, we are approaching the end of the webinar. I would like to thank our speakers, of course, and all the listeners and viewers for their participation. I would also like to thank Nicole and the whole AFME team in the background for making this work very well. And then finally, for me to say, well, we have very exciting elections coming up. We'll obviously look at that as part of the work that AFME does in Germany from a European perspective, but also, as Frank mentioned, trying to bring the issues to Berlin. And we'll certainly be working with a lot of new politicians in the new Bundestag, and we'll be trying to make sure that capital markets and financial markets are at the forefront of the growth agenda. But with that, I'll end, and thanks again all. It was very nice to speak to both Felix and Frank today. I hope the viewers and listeners enjoyed it as well, and I'm sure we'll all speak again soon. Thank you all very much.
Thanks a lot, Albert, and if you have any question, don't hesitate to contact me.
Thank you.
Thank you.